myself Aditya P. Tripathi. I am once again here with you to continue our discussion on the topic of statement of cash flows. In today's lecture of mine, I shall be dealing with the numerical problems of statement of cash flow as per indirect method. In previous lectures of mine, I told you, briefly about the basics of statement of cash flow as per direct method, indirect method. And now it's time for us to deal with the numerical problems of statement of cash flow as per indirect method. So with this agenda that we shall be learning how to deal with the practical problems of statement of cash flow, I shall be first telling you about some important points, important aspects with which we have to deal with while preparing statement of cash flow, and then we shall proceed with the numerical problem. So let us first have a brief look at the format of statement of cash flow, which I have already shown to you, that this statement of cash flow is classified into three broad activities, starting with the cash flow from operating activities. And in this activity, as I told you, that we have to start with net profit before tax and extraordinary items. I shall be telling you about what is the difference between extraordinary and exceptional items. So we basically start with net profit before tax and extraordinary items, and then we have to nullify the impact of non-cash, non-operating items. So I told you non-cash items like depreciation, transfer to reserve, non-operating items like loss on sale of plant, dividend paid, which belong to the remaining two activities, that is investing and financing activities. After making this adjustment, what we get is being denoted as operating profit before working capital changes, which means that we have taken care of non-cash and non-operating items, but we are yet to take care of the adjustments regarding working capital changes. So after this point, what we do, we have a look at the movement of current assets and current liabilities, and then we try to monitor whether there is an increase in current asset or current liability, or decrease in current asset or current liability. So depending on the direction of the items of current assets and current liabilities, we either add or subtract in the value from the operating profit before working capital changes. I already told you about the logic behind the addition and subtraction, that when do we add the change in current asset, and when do we subtract it from the operating profit before working capital changes. Just to remind you, if there is a decrease in current asset, it is being added, it is considered to be an addition to the cash inflow, whereas whenever there is an increase in current asset, we consider it to be a kind of cash outflow, and accordingly it is subtracted. And after this adjustment of current asset and current liability, what we get is being called as operating profit after working capital changes, and then we subtract payment of income tax out of it to arrive at cash generated from operating activities. Now this basically, if you look at the statement of cash flow, this first segment, that is cash flow from operating activities, it actually it takes considerable or significant part of our statement of cash flow. After this statement, cash flow from operating activities is calculated, we move ahead to the next head, that is cash flow from investing activities, and under this activity we try to find out the cash generated from or used in investing activities, and then we move towards financing activities. After working about working on this statement, cash flow from operating, investing and financing activities, we aggregate them to find out whether there is an increase in cash inflow or decrease in cash. Accordingly, the same is added to the opening balance of cash and cash equivalents, and automatically in a very obvious manner we get the closing balance of cash and cash equivalents. So this was all about the format of statement of cash flow. Now I'll be telling you about the treatment of some important items in statement of cash flows before I proceed with the treatment of those important items, because many times my learners are asking me, sir, how to deal with these items and what should be the uniform criteria, uniform way of dealing with those significant items. For instance, there is a discussion on provision for taxation or provision for depreciation, that is also known as accumulated depreciation. Accumulated depreciation we call it. Students have some confusion regarding proposed dividend or at times they ask about interim dividend as well. So I shall actually be dealing with the treatment of these important items, and then we'll proceed for the numerical problems. So before that, let me first tell you about the extraordinary and exceptional items. Because at times my learners are getting confused, sir. Every time and again in accounting and finance, and especially in statement of cash flow, we are reminded about the treatment of extraordinary and exceptional items. So are they same or they are different? Answer is they are different. Now, if you look at the terminology, that is, if you consider the term itself, that is, extraordinary item. Extraordinary means the term extraordinary itself is having a suffix of ordinary. So, the item must belong to the ordinary course of business. It means it belongs to our operations, but it is, extraordinary in nature. So, the transaction belongs to the business operation, but since its nature is that of extraordinary, it rarely happens. That's why we call it extraordinary item. For instance, there is a loss of stock by fire. So stock is supposed to be maintained into the business enterprise. This is our routine activity. We have to maintain requisite quantum of stock. So we cannot avoid the maintenance of stock, and somehow we also go for buying an insurance policy so that in case of any untoward incident we are able to manage with those losses which may occur. So if there is a loss of stock by fire, students ask me, sir, whether it is an extraordinary item or exceptional item. I always say it is an extraordinary item. Why don't we call it exceptional? Because at times students think, sir, do you think that fire will occur every day? No, obviously not. That's why we are not calling it, the ordinary transaction of business enterprise. We are terming it to be an extraordinary act. There is a case, suppose there is a legal case pending against the business enterprise, and the decision may either be in favor of business or it may be against our business. So that is also an extraordinary item, because this transaction, this case is basically due to our business operation. This loss of stock by fire is because of business operation. You bought some property, you sold it out, there is a profit or loss on sale of this specific asset. So whatever loss or profit you are supposed to incur or earn, that is basically out in your due course of operations. So we cannot call it exceptional, we call it extraordinary item. Now the pertinent question comes, then sir, what is exceptional item? What do you consider into exceptional item? For instance, suppose due to this global pandemic of COVID-19, suppose in your country government of India announced some kind of subsidy. Now some kind of subsidy because of your the shutdown of your business, and government has given you some government has extended some hand of cooperation by giving you some subsidy. So that is basically an exceptional item. That is your exceptional income, because pandemic is not at all part of your business enterprise, nor you ever thought of getting this kind of subsidy from the government. So it is basically categorized as exceptional item. So exceptional items are those which has nothing to do with your business operations. And the moment you feel that this specific transaction has something to do with my routine business, or it is related to my business operations, then obviously you should consider it as extraordinary items. Now what is the role of this extraordinary and exceptional item into statement of cash flows? We have to show them wherever to whatever activity they belong to. If they belong to operations, you show it into operating activities. If it belongs to investing or financing, it will go to its related activity. But the only point is that if there is a presence of some extraordinary or exceptional item, it is your duty as an accountant to show it separately. Why separately? So as to enable the stakeholders to know that this income will not be repeated in future. Or if it is a loss, it will not occur in future. It is not of recurring nature. It is one-time transaction. There was a legal case pending against the company, and company won that case. The decision was in favor of company, and company got huge amount as compensation. So that compensation is a one-time receipt, remember. So you need to show it to the stakeholders. Otherwise, what will happen? In the next year, when you will prepare the statement of cash flow, the stakeholder may have a question or may have a doubt in their mind that last year the cash inflow was this much, why this year it has declined? So it should be clear aloud. It should be very much clear to the user, to each and every stakeholder, that if in this year there is a cash inflow into operating activities, how much belongs to the ordinary course of business and how much is extraordinary or exceptional. So we have to classify. So my dear learners, always remember that we have to show the extraordinary items and exceptional items under under a specific note to it. Apart from showing it into your statement of cash flow, at times we give a footnote also, we give a note at the end of the statement of cash flow that this cash flow belong to this specific extraordinary or exceptional item. Now with this understanding of extraordinary and exceptional items, let us go ahead with the treatment of some important items in statement of cash flow. A very important question or a very important aspect of it is provision for taxation. Now most of the students, they have a doubt on this, sir, how to deal with income tax, how to deal with provision for taxation. Sometimes in question income tax is given, sometimes in question provision for taxation is given. So my dear learner, let's first clarify what is the role of income tax into our business enterprise. Just do remember, as per Indian Income Tax Act 1961, we call it Income Tax Act 1961, we have to pay advance tax. There is a system of making payment of tax in advance. So Income Tax Department expects that you should pay as you earn. So that is why we are making payment of taxes on quarterly basis. So do remember that income tax payment is supposed to be paid in advance. So if question shows the income tax and there is nothing else given in the question, just do remember it belongs to operating activities and you have to show it as cash outflow under the head of cash flow from operating activities. This is for sure that income tax is supposed to be paid in advance. Now the second doubt, sir, what if provision for taxation is given? Now just do remember, every business enterprise creates a provision for taxation every year. Why so? Because they assume that after doing this calculation at the end of financial year, the amount of taxation may differ. It may increase or decrease. How do you know that in first 3 quarters? How can you expect that in first 3 quarters, if you have incurred losses, in fourth quarter you will not make any profit, you will not book any profit, or vice versa? That in first 3 quarters you made huge amount of profit and in the fourth quarter there might be a possibility that there is a complete lockdown and there is no transaction which is taking place into your business. So provision for taxation is a kind of reserve which you are creating for taxation. So do remember, and whenever in examination question provision for taxation is given and question is silent about the payment of tax, then how to deal with it? I'll show you with an example. Suppose you are provided with the opening and closing balance of provision for taxation account, which means it was present in the balance sheet of both the years, first year and second year. Now what you will do, you have to go to working note and simply show the opening balance of provision for taxation account into your ledger posting. So I have shown it here, buy balance brought down 10,000 rupees, which means this company was having an opening balance of 10,000 rupees on account of provision for taxation, and there is a closing balance of 2,000 rupees. So you will show here to balance carried down 2,000 rupees. Now depending on the type of question, sometimes in question amount taken allocated from profit and loss account on account of provision for taxation is given. In that case, what you will do, suppose if you assume that you have opening and closing balance of provision for taxation and you are provided in the profit and loss account that company has allocated 5,000 rupees on account of provision for taxation. So you will write on the credit side of provision for taxation account, buy profit and loss account 5,000 rupees. Now the remaining value, the balance on the left side, that is the debit side, will actually be assumed to be a tax payment. We shall assume that it is nothing but a payment of income tax. So you will write to bank account rupees 13,000 as balancing figure, because 15,000 rupees is on the credit side and you have only closing balance of 2,000 on the debit side. So we shall assume that this 13,000 must have been a payment of tax. This is the way we deal with provision for taxation when we have opening and closing balance given in the question along with amount allocated from profit and loss account. But what if in place of amount taken from profit and loss account, question provides you the amount of income tax paid? Then the same will be the treatment for profit and loss account. We shall be finding it as balancing figure. Here in this example, what I have assumed that the amount allocated from profit and loss account is given in the question. So balancing figure is nothing but tax paid. So this is the way we find the amount of tax which is paid by the business enterprise during the financial year with the help of provision for taxation account. So remember, our motive is to know what is the amount of tax paid by the business enterprise, because it has to be shown as cash outflow under the head of cash flow from operating activities. So my motive is to know how much tax is paid. And do remember that provision for taxation account, if it has been taken from a profit and loss account, basically it's a non-cash payment because you are creating a provision. So we have to only deal with cash transactions because we are preparing statement of cash flow. So any on paper transfer if you are making, suppose if you are creating provision for taxation account, and further I'll be dealing with proposed dividend also. So if you have any non-cash transaction which is on an on paper transfer, for that you will not make any entry into statement of cash flow. So do remember, always keep this thing in the back of your mind, that we are preparing statement of cash flow, we are not preparing statement of credit flow. For that we already have profit and loss account, because there we are following accrual system of accounting. Here we are following the cash basis. So I hope you have understood how to deal with provision for taxation account. If in the examination question provision for taxation is given as an item on the liability side, do remember that you have to treat it like this and don't consider it to be the part of current liability. So the answer is here is why we are not considering it under the head of current liability, because we have already taken care of this item, and the outcome of it, that is a tax payment, will be shown as cash outflow under the head of cash flow from operating activities. So the first indication, the first instruction to you is that whenever in the examination question provision for taxation account is given under the in your balance sheet, do remember that we will not consider it to be part of current liability while dealing with working capital changes, right? Now moving ahead, the second item is proposed dividend. Remember, I am only dealing with those transactions where students are having where students are frequently coming up with the doubts. Proposed dividend, because there are a number of transactions, all transactions cannot be discussed here. I'll only be taking up those transactions which are very significant and where the students have significant number of students are having their doubt. Proposed dividend. Now before dealing with the proposed dividend in the statement of cash flow, we need to understand what is the logic, what is the rule or provision for proposed dividend as per Companies Act 2013. Companies Act 2013 says whatever has been proposed as dividend in the annual general meeting of a company, that is supposed to be paid by the company. So once you propose, you have to pay. So whatever has been proposed, there is a time limit as per the provisions of Companies Act 2013. You have to make payment of dividend. So there is an assumption. It is that kind of proposal which is never denied. Once the company has proposed dividend, it has to pay as per the provisions of Companies Act. Earlier the time lag used to be higher in terms of days, but now it has been reduced. The reason being that these payments are made online, either via IMPS or NEFT or RTGS, whatever is the size of amount, accordingly they are transferring. So proposed dividend, we have to assume that whatever has been proposed in the previous year, whether question says or not, we assume that it must have been paid in the current financial year. So if you find the proposed dividend in the balance sheet on the liability side, proposed dividend for 2 years, do remember that last year's proposed dividend must have been paid in the current year. Now there is a doubt in the minds of learners, sir, why the dividend of last year is paid in the current year? Try to understand. It is very logical. Last year's dividend was declared after the end of financial year, that is 31st March. So after that 31st March, once your accounts are audited, company calls for AGM. So obviously the dividend cannot be paid during the financial year. It has to be paid after that financial year. The reason is very, very simple and clear, because unless the AGM, that is annual general meeting, is called, the dividend cannot be proposed, and unless it is not proposed and finalized, it cannot be paid. So last year's proposed dividend is supposed to be paid in the current year. Now some learners have a counter question. Sir, what if the question indicates about interim dividend? Do remember, interim dividend is basically part of your final dividend. So suppose company has proposed a total dividend of say 10 lakh rupees and it has paid interim dividend of 2 lakh rupees. So that 2 lakh rupees is basically part of this 10 lakh amount of proposed dividend which has been proposed by the company, which has been declared as final dividend by the company. So finally company will no more pay 10 lakh rupees, company will only pay 8 lakh rupees because 2 lakh rupees have already been paid. So you should not have any doubt into your mind. Now the question comes how to deal with it. It is very simple. You simply take the closing balance and opening balance. Since it is on the liability side of the balance sheet, we show it on the credit side. Opening balance, buy balance brought down. Suppose in this problem 1,50,000 rupees of opening balance is given and 1 lakh rupees of closing balance is given. So very simple. Open a ledger account in working notes, show the opening balance on the credit side and closing balance on the debit side. And without even having any doubt about payment of dividend, you have to assume that this 1,50,000 rupees, which was the opening balance, it is basically proposed dividend of previous year and it must have been paid in the current year. So we have shown here 1,50,000 as payment of dividend, and remaining value, that is 1 lakh rupees of current year's proposed dividend, is treated as allocation from profit and loss account. And in this way you close your ledger account in working note, and very simple that we assume that dividend of 1,50,000 rupees which was proposed in the previous year has been paid in the current year. So even if you don't open this ledger account, I suggest you that whenever in the examination question you find proposed dividend on the liability side under the head of current liabilities, assume that last year's proposed dividend must have been paid in the current year. To the max, what you can do is you can provide a note there that we have assumed that this proposed dividend must have been paid. So this is the way, my dear learners, we deal with the proposed dividend when it is given in the examination. The only difference here is that in place of one entry of payment of 1,50,000, if interim dividend is given, there will be two entries for it. One which has been paid as interim dividend and another which has been paid as final dividend. So this is the way we deal with the proposed dividend. Apart from this, we have some other points also. Apart from provision for taxation, proposed dividend, interim dividend, we have some non-cash transactions also. Do remember, non-cash transactions are never entered into statement of cash flow, because we are preparing which statement? We are preparing statement of cash flow. So there is no place into our statement for non-cash transactions. Provision for taxation, I already told you. Proposed dividend, we have already discussed. Interim dividend we had discussed. At times there is a point regarding change in ownership interest. Suppose if there is a change in the ownership, so whatever cash flow which is arising from either obtaining or losing control of subsidiaries or other businesses, it must be presented separately and it has to be classified as investing activities. So do remember, sometimes in your question it is given that there is either a cash inflow or outflow due to change in ownership interest. Do remember that ownership belongs to investing activity, so it has to be presented separately and classified under that head of investing activity. Another important transaction is foreign currency cash flows. If you have any unrealized gain or loss due to change in the foreign exchange rates, just do remember that you have to first identify that whether it involve any cash flow or not. So since there is a foreign currency cash flow, there is an unrealized gain or loss due to change in the foreign exchange rates. Remember, it does not involve any cash flow, so we are never going to report it in the statement of cash flow. So some learners, they are getting confused that, sir, everything I could understand, but whenever there is a foreign currency cash flow and there is an unrealized gain or loss due to it, I get confused. So need not to get confused. Do remember that there is no place for it in your statement of cash flow because it's a non-cash transaction. But remember, in order to reconcile cash and cash equivalents at the beginning and at the end of the year, the effect of this change in exchange rate on cash and cash equivalent is reported separately as a footnote. We don't show it under this specific statement of cash flow. So these were the important points which I thought appropriate before dealing with the numerical problems. I tried to tell you how to deal with these items, say proposed dividend, provision for taxation, foreign currency cash flows, or some non-cash transactions when we are preparing statement of cash flow. In the next lecture of mine, I'll be taking up a numerical problem and would show you how to solve this statement of how to solve a problem of statement of cash flow. I hope you must have understood these important points related to statement of cash flows. With this, I'm ending today's lecture. Thank you so much.